Hello, good morning. My name is Chris Wigley, and welcome to this hybrid Discovery Forum. A lot has happened since our last Discovery Forum, which was in November of 2019. And since then, Genomics England has changed a lot, the world has changed a lot. So I wanted to say a huge welcome to our audience members who are here in person. Welcome, hello. A huge welcome to our audience online. Welcome, hello. And if we're looking at the camera or we're looking at the audience or we're kind of getting our heads together, bear with us. We're all going to get more expert at this as we go along. So back in November 2019 at the last Discovery Forum, I'm sure that some of you were there. I talked a lot about the journey that we were going on as Genomics England from being a project, the 100,000 Genomes Project, to a platform to really try and enable and catalyze this whole ecosystem around genomics in the UK, which is rich and varied. And we also talked about really trying to focus on two big things that we wanted to do. Big thing number one was our partnership with the National Health Service around bringing whole genome sequencing into standard of care for various rare disease and cancer conditions. The great news is that in the period since the last Discovery Forum, despite the challenges of COVID, we have stood up that service. At a human level, that means that people who have long-term undiagnosed rare diseases are now getting whole genome sequencing as part of their standard of care, which is really exciting. Every kid in the country who has cancer is getting whole genome sequencing. Various other cancer types, like blood cancers, hem-onc, or sarcomas, are also receiving those insights to inform the diagnosis and treatment. So we're incredibly excited about the progress we've made in close partnership with Sue Hill and team in the NHS in doing that in these difficult circumstances. The second big thing that we talked about was this ecosystem of research across academia and our biotech and pharma partners, obviously the audience today. And we talked back in 2019 about needing to make the data sets that we had and the tooling that we had more accessible, about wanting to scale our operations, do more in partnership. And part of what we've have done there is indeed to re-platform our research environment. We've launched in partnership with Amazon Web Services and LifeBit a new trusted research environment. We've also done an enormous research project through the COVID period. So as part of that, we recruited and sampled and sequenced 35,000 people. So over a third of the whole 100,000 Genomes Project, again in just under a year. So it's been an incredibly busy time for us. Those who pay attention to UK politics will know that we've just had a big comprehensive spending review. We were excited that the Chancellor stood up in Parliament, and when he announced the £5 billion that's been set aside for healthcare R&D, two projects from Genomics England headlined that. One is the work that we're doing around ensuring that the data sets we hold reflect and are as diverse as the populations that we serve. So we're excited that the Secretary of State, Sajid Javid, has become participant number one in our diverse data cohort. And the other project that was announced was around newborn sequencing. So there was a lot of work to do to scope and shape and design that project, that service, but the goal there is to offer sequencing to the parents of newborn babies, to diagnose and hopefully treat early onset, high penetrance conditions. And really this is alongside the existing screening, things like the heel prick test, but potentially over time we can start to see the benefit of that through the whole life course of these newborn kids. So hugely exciting, various new horizons of collaboration for us. The only way that we can do that is in partnership with these groups, with you. We're really excited about what we can do together, and we've talked about human stories being at the heart of everything we do. We want to put those, we want to make more and more of those human stories have a happy ending in partnership. So we have a full program today, but before we go into that, we have a short video just to introduce some of the themes we're going to talk about and some of the people who you'll see today. So if we can roll the video, then we'll be back live after that.
I said, look, I think we should try and do 100,000 genomes. And in the end, we ended up with a plan to create a company to get it essentially at arm's length from the NHS so it wouldn't get squeezed to death. And off we went.
So if the origins of Genomics England are the 100,000 Genomes project, and that work is ongoing, we're now at a moment where we're pivoting from being a project to a platform. And that platform is really made up of a number of growth engines. One of those is the Genomic Medicine Service, where we're targeting 500,000 genomes through that service by the end of 2024. The second is our research ecosystem, where we have a new cloud-based infrastructure, all of our data, tooling and services brought together in one place. The third is our work in cancer, where we're looking to bring the latest technologies to bear on that terrible disease. The fourth is our work in diversity, where we want to make sure that all of the insights we generate are relevant for every single community that we serve. And the fifth, and maybe biggest, is our newborns cohort, which headlined the government's healthcare R&D announcements in this spending review. We have an incredibly rich legacy in the UK of being a leader in this field. And so our role at Genomics England is really to enable and power this whole ecosystem in the UK.
What's exciting about what Genomics England is becoming is that we are starting to build a much deeper understanding of who it is that we are working with and for in the clinical setting, in the research setting, with our commercial partners. It isn't just about here's some data, use it. It's about this data is available and it is thoughtful and it is only accessible to the right people. So what we're aiming for is a seamless journey for our commercial partners, researchers, clinicians. That's hugely important if people are going to benefit from what it is that Genomics England is providing, but also enjoy that experience, right? And build habits from with the tools and the products and services that we have.
Genomics England's unique because of the partnership with the NHS, because we're embedded, unlike many other research studies, in day-to-day healthcare, and uniquely for us at national scale. That means that the data that is available to researchers with the participants' consent is from real-life day-to-day healthcare. It also means that we can reach back into the clinic and conduct studies in response to new questions that arise or are pressing for research. We've got clinicians who work day to day in rare disease, in cancer, and they're experts in the delivery of genomics and experts in the data that we hold in our research environments.
One of the things that perhaps makes us one of the top genomics places in the world is just the magnitude of what we do. If we think about how much storage we hold today, for example, we have about 60 petabytes of storage, 80% of it is used. Sometimes that's a big challenge because there's just a lot of data points and you want someone to help you get on with it rather than having to start from scratch as a commercial partner. So more and more we're offering like a consultancy where we can help them answer their questions without having to understand how all that data is structured, trying to work very closely in partnership with them. What we're trying now is to use the cloud more and more to be able to be more elastic depending on the user's needs.
In order for us to achieve our really extensive ambition, we just can't do that on our own. We have to engage extensively. So 8 of the top 10 pharma companies engage with our data, but we also work with specialist biotech companies and even startups. We engage with technology partners, with funders like the MRC and UKRI. We engage with large charities and we engage with other key parts of the UK healthcare system like Public Health England, like NHS Digital, the National Institute for Health Research. So the real challenge of genomically stratified biomedical research is that you need a lot of components of a system to come together. And Genomics England can really act as the front door for all of those services. So we can be the destination that biopharma companies and academic researchers can come to when they're trying to find insights about some of the most vulnerable patients in our population. And that is what I think makes us special.
When I agreed to share my whole genome sequence and my health data with Genomics England, I was hoping that that could help inform the diagnosis for my son, who's severely disabled. Getting a diagnosis means that you can start to build a pathway into the future and to start exploring treatments that can really help them based on what you now know is wrong. The participant panel is made up of people whose data is currently held by Genomics England. We've been involved since 2016 when the panel was set up, and we've had a really strong working relationship with the leadership at the organisation ever since. As a member of the Access Review Committee, sometimes it's genuinely exciting to see the applications that come forward from commercial partners who want to work with the data that Genomics England holds. And it's just fantastic to think that in the next few years, some of these discoveries could have a real impact on real lives of people that we know and people in our wider community. So thank you and good luck and keep going.
This is a really important tool for diagnosis of real patients in real healthcare systems. And if you do this at scale, you can build around it a really impressive system that makes a massive difference to healthcare globally.
And so I guess in closing, I would just say to everyone who's watching this, thank you for engaging with us. Thank you for making the time today. We hope you're really excited by what you hear, by the conversations you have, and by the possibilities that we have to work together. If we can get these partnerships right, we're really at a moment where we can transform biosciences, the industry in the UK, and the lives of patients and participants. It's an incredibly exciting time to be working together.
Welcome back, everyone. So my name is Parker Moss. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer, and I'm so delighted to host our commercial partners from Biopharma back to the 7th Discovery Forum. Now, this was a forum that we used to run regularly in person. It was a great networking event. It was a great way of us sharing our insights with the community, and it was also a really great opportunity for feedback from all of you. Now, in March 2020, something happened, the world paused, and we thought, well, we're going to pause these discovery forums until we can host the next one in person. And then the pause went on, and it went on, and by popular demand, we're back, because company by company, all of our engagement partners started saying to us, when's the next discovery forum? We want to hear what you're up to. So this is our response. We have a very small studio audience, but we're delighted that we have hundreds of participants dialing in from around the world to join us today. But we will be back in person, so we're looking forward already to the Discovery Forum 8, where we're going to bring you in person and do this with food and drinks and real interaction. Now, for now, let me go through a few things to describe what we've been up to at Genomics England, and I'm going to start really with our commercial purpose, because we get asked this question a lot. Why do we work with biopharma? Why do we engage with the commercial sector? And we have real clarity on this. So the first thing to do is to introduce you to a concept of really the key endpoint of what we're trying to achieve in research, and that is clinical return on data. We want to make the most of all of the clinical and genomic data that our participants have so generously donated into the National Genomic Research Library. So who is that return going to? And there are three constituents that are important and that are important in this order. So the first people to talk about are our participants. We are an organisation which is participant-led. We exist by permission and at the pleasure of our participants, and these are some of our population's most vulnerable people with severe cancers, parents with children with rare disease, and we're every day humbled and grateful to their participation and their donation of their samples and their consent to engage with us. And what we are trying to achieve for our participants is very simple. People with cancer and rare disease, they want better therapeutics, more on-target drugs with lower toxicity and higher efficacy. And the way that we can achieve that is making sure that their data is getting to the people that manufacture drugs, that design drugs, and that are increasingly moving the whole sector of healthcare and life sciences into the era of precision medicine. The second constituency that we're really focused on is the NHS, and we want to make sure that our engagement with the biopharma sector has a direct return to the NHS. Of course, the NHS is highly aligned with the interests of patients, and they also want to see accurate diagnostics and the optimal treatment regimens for our patients. But they also have massive productivity concerns to worry about. And for those of you who have read the recent New England Journal of Medicine paper that just came out on rare disease, you will have noted the staggering diagnostic odyssey that rare disease patients typically go through. So a rare disease patient today would typically have 75 outpatient appointments and over a period of about, over 67 outpatient appointments over a period of 75 months. And that's costing tens of thousands of pounds per patient to the NHS. And what we want to do is cut through that diagnostic odyssey and get to a specific and sensitive diagnosis upfront on the basis of a whole genome sequence. So that's the second constituency that we're really focused on. And the third constituency is the UK PLC itself. So there's been a lot of discussion in the press recently about the UK life sciences strategy and our ambition to remain and become an even greater life sciences superpower. And the key to doing that is attracting the leading life sciences companies to invest in drug discovery, R&D in the country, and also to run clinical trials in the UK, which benefits our participants. We want to maximize clinical trial participation. And one of the ways we can do that is making sure that the data from patients in the NHS are surfaced and structured and available for research. And not just the data itself. I'll talk later about how important it is that our population is a recallable resource, recallable for clinical trials, but also recallable for sample access so that samples can get used in functional genomic pipelines, which are an increasingly large part of the discovery process in life sciences. So Chris mentioned a few minutes ago about this transition from project to platform. That has been a real major theme of Genomics England's journey over the last couple of years. So between 2012 and 2018-19, we were really head down focused on delivering the 100,000 genome project, which had a clear endpoint of maximizing diagnostic yield in the NHS, but also ensuring that we could deliver a scalable whole genome sequencing platform at a national scale. And since we finished the curation of that data set, we of course will continue to support the participants in that project for the rest of their lives. But since that data set curation was completed, we stepped back and we paused and we put a lot of thought into what the next phase of our journey would be. And there's a healthcare story. You're going to hear in a section later today about the NHS Genomic Medicine Service and how we are supporting them in delivering whole genome sequence-based diagnostics into cancer and rare disease. But today we're going to be talking a lot about the other part of our story, which is our research story. And very simply, we have an ambition to be the best genomic research platform for cancer and rare disease research in the world. And we're doing a lot of work to optimize our operating model and to make sure that we understand the needs of our customers and really deliver an asset which can work for anyone doing biomedical research, from startups through to small biotechs through to the giant tier 1 pharma companies. And I'm really proud to say that 8 of the top 10 pharma companies in the world by market cap are using our data today. So here are a few of the things that we've done in the last few years, and we're on a journey to improve things every day. And one of the purposes of this session today is to get feedback from all of you. So this is where we've got to so far, and please keep giving us input. You've been very generous, and I'm grateful to our pharma partners who have been interviewed by us as we're trying to gather insight into your specific needs. So we're trying to create a uniquely integrated technology platform through which we surface genomic and clinical longitudinal data to support your research needs. One of the things we've done, and you'll be hearing from LifeBit later, is we've changed our research platform. We've moved all of our data into Amazon Web Services, and we've integrated a really terrific and highly immersive bioinformatics platform run by a British company called LifeBit. And LifeBit provides just contemporary bioinformatic workflows that allow you to work with Jupyter notebooks, federate data across Amazon S3 buckets. It allows you to do your analysis through browsers. You can containerize applications. You can bring in your own data and work in private working spaces. So we've really thought hard about how we can improve the experience of researchers who are getting their hands dirty with our data. But the quality of the platform is not enough. We've also been working very hard on the quality of the clinical data itself. And in the last 18 months, we've done a lot to enrich our clinical data set. We've integrated with disease registries, including the cancer registry in the UK, which has brought in tens of millions of additional data points so that we now have, for example, full cancer regimen data, full text pathology and radiology data. We have all of the HES data set, which is a bit like the billing data in America, which gives you kind of longitudinal detail about admissions and discharges and diagnosis codes. So a really extensive clinical data set. And what we're doing culturally within the partnership development team is really focusing on shifting our model from just providing access to that data for our research partners to providing insights. And I'll tell you a little bit later about how we're moving up that access to insight curve. So we think that we have one of the greatest data assets in cancer and rare disease research, but it's not just about data. We have samples as well, and importantly, our participants have consented to be recalled for sample access and recruitment. And that's an incredibly important part in the discovery journey. As pharma companies move from animal models, rodent models with mice and rats towards human tissue models, we increasingly need human samples of kind of exquisitely annotated disease subgroups so that those tissue models can go into iPSCs and organoids for CRISPR knockout workflows to really validate that the associations that you discover from our genomic data is actually causal. So that's another key part of our data asset. And then it's important to think of us not just as a library of data, but we're also a community of expertise. And we have a wonderful external community of research expertise. We have over 4,000 academics engaged in our data. We've broken them down into disease groups. These are some of the leading clinical academics in the UK and around the world. And the UK academics were in particular the people that in many cases recruited the patients into the 100,000 Genome Project. So it's fantastic if you want to collaborate with those academics to be able to speak to clinicians who are not just experts in research of the data, but often know the patients themselves and can really talk to you about the heterogeneity of the data set in detail. It's a real benefit if you're building machine learning models, for example. So those are our external experts. We also have a huge resource of internal expertise, and we do a lot of analysis, and we have a pipeline of data products that we're bringing to bear to really give researchers a head start when you're using our data set. And for example, we are producing variant allele frequency tables for partners to use. We've aggregated all of our germline into a massive, I think the world's largest whole genome sequencing variant aggregate file so that you can quickly cluster germline data by and search for deleteriousness and pathogenicity, run GWASs and PWASs efficiently. So that really makes research easier. And in cancer, we've pre-calculated human mutational burden and mutational signatures across all of the cancers. So those are some of the activities that we're putting into place to really become a great enabling platform for all types of researchers. I'm not going to talk through all of this slide, but I wanted to make the point that we are really working across the entire value chain for pharma. We do a lot of work in target identification. So as I mentioned, we have quite an exquisitely annotated data set. We've linked to all of the key genomic data sets, so ClinVar and Ensemble variant prioritizer. We've integrated with the population genomic data sets like Nomad, for example. We have Lofty for looking at loss of function variants. We have epigenetic data sets like Splice AI integrated. So for people who want to do target identification, we can really provide a lot of value there. But also we're working with supporting people who want to go beyond identification to target validation by providing those samples for you so that you can work in your wet labs with our samples and really confirm these associations are drivers. As you would expect, we work in clinical development with biomarker discovery a lot. We particularly interested in helping patient stratification for more advanced clinical trial design. We work a lot developing surrogate endpoints for partners, which shortens and reduces the cost of clinical trials. And increasingly, we're engaging in post-market as well, post-launch. So it's wonderful that we can identify targets in rare disease, for example, but how helpful to look through our HES data set and be able to go back all the way to the 1980s to see how those pathogenic targets generate rare disease and pathogenicity in the real world. We work across a very wide range of users in pharma, and we're sensitive to the very different needs and depth of experience and also resource that the user groups have. So we work with bioinformaticians, computational biologists, but we also work with therapeutic leaders. We work a lot with genomic leaders, and we're sensitive that you have different attention spans and different levels of willingness to get involved in our data. So we can provide you with self-service, opportunity to engage at patient level data, but also we can support you with research that we do in-house on your behalf, and I'll tell you a little bit about that model in a minute. Here are just a few very brief success stories of the kind of things that have happened just in the last 18 months in the way that we've supported our commercial partners. So in discovery, there was a wonderful UK use case, a US biotech who was very deeply engaging in ovarian cancer research, had developed their own AI ML models on an in-house data set, which was very high quality, but small and potentially suffering from the risk of overfitting. This company was able to not only validate their response to treatment and prognostic models on our in-house data, but also actually successfully identified some new genetic insights, which did lead to a successful new discovery program for them. In clinical development, we were really excited recently that one of our partners out in Asia actually, through diagnostic discovery process, identified 3 children who had very rare CMVs and had been in our data set for over 4 years without a diagnosis. This team in Asia, so on the other side of the world, successfully diagnosed those patients. We checked the validity and the accuracy of those diagnoses, and since then we were able to return those diagnoses back to the participants, and it looks like there may be therapeutic opportunities for those patients, and the parents are having that discussed with them right at the moment, so it was very thrilling. And in post-market, one of the large tier 1 pharma companies did a massive investment in melanoma research recently. They were really trying to understand some of the common confounders and real-world evidence, and we organised for them to collaborate with our melanoma academic community, and 10 hospitals participated in that, and we organised research nurses to go deep into the clinical records and pull out some exotic missing factors in the data like UV exposure, which really led to a better kind of biological understanding that improved clinical trial design for them in the future. So these are just some very brief examples of the kind of things that we're doing. As we've engaged more and more with pharma partners, got deeper into your pipelines and deeper into your specific needs, the clear message that has come back to Genomics England is that you require a lot of flexibility and engagement. And so we're changing our operating model and our engagement model of how we engage with pharma partners. And I'll be speaking with each of you individually about this, but I just wanted to briefly explain the way that we plan to work with all of our partners in the coming years. So first of all, we're going to make it very much easier for all of our pharma partners to explore our data at scale. Today we already have a data showcase which goes down to phenotypic level, but in the coming months we'll be adding a genotypic filter to that as well, so that any pharma partner can look at aggregate data across our entire data set and very quickly do a feasibility study to see if we have the types of patients that you need to conduct a much more deeper and patient level research. So if you want to ask questions like, for example, do we have any breast cancer patients who are ER positive and PIK3CA negative, that's the type of question that we will make broadly available to the entire enterprise in pharma. The discovery level of access is what we offer today, and this is largely a self-service model. We're working hard on making sure that our training material and our documentation is excellent, and we encourage partners with well-developed and well-resourced bioinformatic teams to come in and explore the data on their own, and we'll provide you support where you need it with good training. But we're also introducing 2 new engagement models with pharma, which I think are going to really make a difference in shifting us from an access model to an insight model. So the co-create model is where we would set up a dedicated bioinformatics team to really co-create research on your behalf. We will do projects for you, we'll run monthly workshops, and we will really provide the types of analysis that your in-house bioinformaticians would like to do today and perhaps don't have the time. We recognize that there's a high activation energy to get up to speed on our data model, and we're going to help you do that. And the final model, which we're only going to be able to really offer to a few engagement partners, we're engaging with our first one today, and we perhaps have one more place for this year, is an alliance model where we're going to be doing extensive prospective research with our partners, not just bioinformatic research, but addressing biological questions and providing biological answers, not just in our retrospective data set, but prospectively. And we'll work with our our partners in the National Institute of Health Research to recruit prospectively. We'll be recontacting patients at scale if you need samples out of the NHS. And this is really a dedicated R&D collaboration that we hope will generate much deeper insights from our data. Now, as we move from left to right on this, there'll be a much greater commitment from us, and there'll be a need for a much greater commercial and financial commitment from our commercial partners. And we think that's going to really make a difference in getting this return on clinical data for all of the constituents that I mentioned. So let's get started. It's easy to get started with Genomics England. We'll work with you to explore our data and make sure that you can scope out your projects. Our project governance has really improved in the last couple of years. From the point of submitting a study design, it takes a couple of weeks to get that approved, and then you can get started choosing the service level that you want to engage with Genomics England with, and let's get some great science done and generate that clinical return on data that we're so hoping we can provide for our participants, for the NHS and for UK PLC. Thank you very much. And to really explain how we're going to get science done, I'm really excited actually to introduce onto the stage our new Chief Scientist, Matt Brown, and our Chief Digital Officer, Rakhi Rajani. Please come and join us.
Thanks, Parker. All right. Welcome, Matt. Thank you for that, Parker. Welcome, Matt. My name is Rakhi Rajani. I'm the Chief Digital Officer here at Genomics England, and I'm very excited to welcome Professor Matt Brown, who is our new Chief Scientist. Joined us, I think this is week number 4, if that's right.
That's correct.
So you have all of the answers by now, I'm sure, right? So Matt, can you tell us a little bit about life before Genomics England? What were you up to, and what do you get up to outside of your research work?
Yeah, thanks, Rakhi. So look, I'm a clinician scientist by background. I trained originally in Australia, and then in 1994 my wife and I came to University of Oxford, where we then spent the next 12 years working at Wellcome Trust Centre for Human Genetics. We'd actually decided that we were going to spend 2 years there, but it was such an exciting environment for doing near-patient research in the UK that we ended up spending a lot longer than planned. The first few years of that were pretty bleak, as anybody who worked in common disease genetics at that time will remember. Not a lot of successes. But then we had the fortune of being involved in the Wellcome Trust Case Control Consortium and have the incredible experience of having a new technology come along that basically resolved the pathogenesis of a large number of human diseases. In 2005, we went back to Australia, to Brisbane, and there I continued to work on common and rare diseases, in particularly bone and immune-mediated diseases, but across a really broad range of different diseases. And I set up a genetic medical service and sequencing service in Brisbane that covered a lot of the east coast of Australia for cancer and rare diseases. And additionally, I spent roughly 20% of my time in China doing a similar thing in a provincial city in China called Wenzhou, setting up a very large sequencing facility there. And then two years ago, beginning of 2019, my wife and I came back to the UK to work at the Guy's and St Thomas's Biomedical Research Centre, where I was the director, which is a really exciting position at the hub of a really highly productive near-patient research facility in South London, before I came and joined GEL.
Super. So what are your core research interests? What were they and what are they right now?
Look, for all of my career I've researched rheumatological diseases. I'm a practicing rheumatologist, and I particularly work on the disease ankylosing spondylitis, which is a common form of inflammatory arthritis, and where genomics is really now pushing virtually all of the drug development that's going on in that disease. So that's particularly exciting. But I've actually had a very broad range of research experience across other neurological diseases. I've run large studies in motor neuron disease, infectious diseases. I've run a huge study in tuberculosis that's still going on in China, and a whole range of other common and rare diseases. Particularly, I've been involved in mapping a large number of skeletal diseases and then developing therapies based on that.
And tell us a little bit about the work that you've done in China, in Australia, over here and in other parts of the world. What have you learned from those experiences, and what do you hope that helps you bring to what it is that we're trying to do at Genomics England?
So what I think the underlying message is that actually research that's actually involving humans and is near human, and where you get partnerships between researchers and clinicians, is actually by far the most potent way of doing it. And so the capability in China that was unique was that I had a situation in a hospital which was truly engaged in making the most of their resource and putting funds into it to bring their university academics and hospital academics together, and that resulted in a really potent partnership. And that's one of the things I really like about Genomics England's model, that it's not a lending library type model. It's a model where, as Parker's just pointed out in his previous presentation, we're about producing, not only obviously the primary purpose of Genomics England is about service development and service delivery for the NHS, but on the research side it's a lot about partnership with industry and academia to make the most use of that to benefit patients, and that model is much more effective than working in isolation.
So tell us a bit more about, so as I said, 4 weeks, right? This is week
Yes.
4, and you have all the answers. So tell us where you think, or where you would like to focus in your first few months at Genomics England. What do you think are our key opportunities to make a difference and to deliver on what Parker has just been talking about?
Look, we have an amazing asset with the really good linkage with the NHS and the resulting excellent sort of clinical resources in rare diseases and cancer. And now we have a 3-year program ahead of us in cancer, rare diseases and diversity studies. We also are coming into the role at a time when we've got a whole bunch of new microscopes coming down the line in terms of technology that will allow us to address all sorts of novel things that have been basically things that we've been dreaming about being able to look at previously but not been able to, which should be able to resolve a lot of the really complex issues in front of us. In addition to that, we're at a point where we're about to transition analysis from almost a cottage industry style analysis where, for example, in cancer, expert opinion largely drives how we transition variant annotation into clinical recommendations, where we know that we should be able to do much better than that if we have more sophisticated analytic methods, particularly bringing multimodal data together. And I think Genomics England is incredibly well positioned to drive research to develop that so that it can be used in clinical practice to enable more diagnosis for rare disease patients and for cancer patients, much better, more accurate personalised medicine.
And how do we leverage what else is happening in the world? So you talked about some of those activities. How do we leverage the science that's happening outside of Genomics England and bring that together with what we're doing to strengthen our impact?
Look, one of my big lessons out of Wellcome Trust Case Control Consortium was that you did much better as big, large coordinated teams where you leveraged the strength of the global research community rather than trying to keep things in-house and control things yourself. And so I'm really keen to ensure that Genomics England increases its level of engagement, particularly with the not only the commercial activity that Parker's talked about, but with the international academic community, where we can basically use thousands to tens of thousands of researchers to look at our data to do more out of it than we can ourselves.
Thank you for that, Matt. So we've heard about Matt, the clinician, the scientist, the researcher, all of those things. Who's Matt outside of those?
Well, my wife would say Matt is work obsessed and not a very good cook.
Fair.
But you haven't even been to my house for dinner
just
yet.
kidding. I've heard the stories.
Very good. No, look, outside of work, I love doing lots of things. COVID has unfortunately got in the way of being able to be with my family, which is frustrating, but I'm not the only person in that position. But pastimes-wise, I love sailing. So in fact, I spent quite a while building racing dinghies in Sydney before I actually decided to do medicine. It's been a passion throughout my life, and in fact, if my wife and I hadn't decided to come here in 2019, right now I'd be preparing to race with a friend of mine in a two-handed race that runs every 5 years from Melbourne to Osaka in Japan.
Oh my goodness, how long would
that's
that
a
take?
long-term goal. It's about a 40-day race.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think we've got some sailors in the audience too.
Yes. So I think actually probably my biggest challenge living in Dulwich, which must be about the furthest place from the sea in the UK apart from landlocked Derbyshire, is working out how to get that back into my life.
How do you keep up with the sailing then when from Dulwich?
I can't. That's the problem.
Okay, well, we'll figure that one out.
Yeah.
Matt, thank you very much for taking the time this morning.
Thanks, Rakhi.
And welcome again to Genomics England.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
I think it might be time to welcome some of the rest of our leadership team back to the stage. If you'd like to join us. Parker, Rich, Augusto, Chris.
Let me just grab this iPad. Come and take a seat. Thanks, Augusto. Are we broadcasting? I'm very proud to be up here with my executive team, not all of them, but some of the key members. And this is a time for the audience to ask some Q&A. And I really would ask that you do, because we want to hear from you. I would like to make this as interactive a session as possible for our participants online, but also in the studio. So please be thinking of your question. But for now, let me just start with an opening question to our CEO, Chris. Chris, this is a session for commercial partners in biopharma, also in the startup community. What do you think good looks like? What does success look like to you in our commercial ambitions?
Well, we've talked about human stories, and we've talked about having an impact on the lives of patients and research participants in this country. I think that lies at the heart of what we do, and the more that we can scale our ability to bring new science, new technology, new approaches in the clinic to benefit those patients, the happier we will be, and the more we'll feel we're fulfilling our mission. So what does it take to do that? You talked a bit about the ecosystem that we're part of, and in the UK we have this incredible legacy from kind of Darwin to Rosalind Franklin, Crick and Watson, Solexa, Oxford Nanopore, etc. We need to build on that and really bring together the whole ecosystem. I think one of the things that we saw through the pandemic was that when that ecosystem mobilizes and pulls together across academia, industry, tech, and the NHS, we can really do extraordinary things. And so we see our role as catalyzing that whole ecosystem, and startups, biotech, and pharma are a critical part of that. And I think we need to lead the debate on this together, and make absolutely clear that we can do this and are doing this in a way which has patients at the heart, which is which we need to earn the trust of our stakeholders, and in a way which is sort of ethical and which we can all be proud of, and take that story out and do that work together.
Thank you, Chris. And I've got a question for not just our Chief Bioinformatician, but our founding Chief Bioinformatician, Augusto Rendon. So you're going to be hearing a lot from Augusto later today. But for now, Augusto, we've been on a real journey from data and data infrastructure. We've just moved from an on-premise environment to a cloud-based environment. Can you just tell us some of the things that you were excited about and some of the challenges of that journey that you've been on?
Yeah, cool. So one of the big things that made it, I think, a little bit harder than normal was to go above and beyond protecting the participants' data. That today means that we control the bit of AWS, we control the keys to the data that sits encrypted in AWS, and our partners, LifeBit, have really tried to make sure that their platform sits within our protected part of the cloud. So that's been a challenge, I think, for all parties. I think another exciting thing which is difficult is to make sure that you can process the data at the speed that you want, that you can make it available while being cost effective for everyone to use. In terms of why is it exciting, I think the big thing with the cloud, of course, is that you can use, if you have your credit card, instead of having to wait. You can buy your time, your compute time. That means that a project that could have taken a long time could be delivered over a weekend, given sufficient computational capacity. So that's actually getting things much faster. And then the other big excitement is that the cloud is connected to the internet, which means that you can do things like federation much more easily. You can really change how you think about tools by using containers, workflows. So it gives many opportunities that before were not readily accessible or were just much more cumbersome.
Thanks, Augusto. So for people who can't see, I'm actually reading questions that are coming into me live on this iPad, and the next one is actually for me. This is a really important one, so I'm going to address this up front. The question is, we know that some of the major challenges in co-discovery is the co-development of IP. Can you talk to us a little bit about how IP issues is addressed in an alliance or a co-creation model? So that's very straightforward. All of our commercial partners sign a commercial agreement with us and a data access agreement, and all foreground IP, which is discovered on our data, is owned by our commercial partners. So it's a very straightforward IP model that we haven't had any challenges at all with. The next question I'd like to pass on to our Chief Medical Officer, Rich Scott, who you'll also be hearing talking today later with the Chief Scientist of the NHS. So Rich is an unusually talented guy because as well as running the medical practice here, Rich is a rare disease consultant in Great Ormond Street in the NHS and still treats patients today. Rich, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the impact that genomic data is having on your patients and how you think that patients with rare disease see genomic data, the impacts of it, and also the impact of commercial engagement in healthcare.
Things have changed so much, I have to say. So I've been at Genomics England the last 6 years. I've been a consultant at Great Ormond Street the last 11 years, and I can't tell you how much things have changed in those 11 years. And a lot of that is because of the changes that we at Genomics England have been involved in and have been delivered by working with academia, with industry, to make those really land, and crucially working really closely with the NHS, and we'll hear more, as you said, from Sue later, and some real examples. So I used to sit in clinic, and I still do, every other Thursday I sit in clinic and see families with rare diseases where you can't even explain to them why these things are happening to their children. I used to have to use all of the sort of the knowledge and the tools that you get taught in medical school to try and work out what test to do. We've turned that entirely on its head. So now we sit there and think, what are the tools we have, the analytical tools we have in front of us that can help answer these questions? And for me, in my clinic, the test I use most often is whole genome sequencing, analysing a trio through the systems that we support with the NHS. And that does two things. Firstly, in some cases, in about a third of families, we find an answer, a diagnosis, now in over a period of months where people have waited years. Secondly, they have the chance at that first discussion to say whether they want to be part of the research offer that we provide. And about 90 to 95% of people are saying yes. And what that gives them is not just hope that if we don't find a diagnosis at the beginning, that people will keep looking, but also it means that whether or not a diagnosis is found, we know that the people that those patients want to be accessing their data in our research environment are and will be really pushing the boundaries. So they have hope, where at the moment, sadly, treatment isn't often an outcome in my clinics. They have the hope and the expectation that they may do in the future.
Thank you, Rich. Right, the questions are actually pouring in. Rather embarrassingly, quite a lot of them are for me directly, so I'm going to address them. So we've got a very good question here from Anonymous, but it's a straightforward one. Can you please explain your research environment and how we gain access to the use of your data? So this is straightforward. The first thing to say is gaining access to our data it involves getting past our Access Review Committee. Now, it's one of the key committees in Genomics England, and it is entirely independent of Genomics England itself. So sitting on that committee are some professors, some clinicians, and importantly, some participants, not just any patients, but participants who actually have their skin literally in the game. We have their tissue in our biobank. And a key part of our trust model is to make sure that only bona fide research companies work with our data and are doing bona fide and impactful research. So there's a process where you need to submit a précis of your company values. There's CVs of the PIs in the company. You need to explain how you engage with participants, and you need to submit your initial study design, both a technical summary and also a lay summary for our participants to follow. And that goes through quite a stringent review process, and they really do look at every individual case quickly. But I'm pleased to say that they're also efficient, and we're getting a 2, maximum 3 week turnaround to approvals now. So once you get engaged and approved as a bona fide research company, we train you up and we just give you access to our research environment. At the moment, we're running these 2 research environments in parallel. our on-premise research environment and our new LifeBit-based cloud environment. We'll train you up and set you free on our data, or we can support you with those service models that I tried to describe before, where we'll do some research on your behalf. And actually, it's a useful point to turn to Rakhi, who you heard before on stage. She's our Chief Digital Officer and responsible for our digital product portfolio. Rakhi, there are a lot of digital products required. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the product culture that you're trying to create for Genomics England.
Sure. Thanks, Parker. I think the key thing around creating the kind of product and service culture that we're trying to build is the human stories that Chris mentioned and that Rich just talked about, because that's at the heart of everything we do. I think for me, for us, it's not about here's another product, here's another product, here's another feature. It's about really translating the core science that Matt's talked about into the real world through products, through services, and through how we engage. And so I think that involves three things. The first is that we're really focused on outcomes. That means what is it that people are trying to achieve, and how do our products and services help them achieve those things? And that's really, really important, because we need to understand that if we're going to make a difference. Which leads to the second point. Another core part of the product culture is, or the products and service culture is spending time with people in context helps us understand that. And you heard from Gillian, you will hear a lot about our engagement work that we do. But even within the teams that help us define and build the products that translate the science into the real world, we spend time with people in context. We spend time with our GLHs, with our commercial partners, with our patients, to understand what it is that they're trying to achieve in the situations they're in, because that is real life, and that's what we need to understand. And then the third thing, I think, is bringing brains together to solve problems. And so the teams that we have, the teams that we've built, the folks that we've brought into Genomics England include our phenomenal engineers, right? The bioinformaticians that Augusta's been talking about, our clinicians, designers, researchers, product managers, scientists, all coming together to solve the problem together. And so what we're saying now, or what we're trying to build, is an environment where all of those brains can come together and solve the problem, and that we don't silo the discoveries and the impact that we're trying to have. And it's not always the easiest thing to do, but when we get there, when we get it right, it's hugely impactful.
Thank you, Rakhi. So we've had a great question here. Does Genomics England have a specific strategy to support R&D for therapeutics? And let me address that one quickly with an example. So yes, we are trying to help therapeutic strategies for individual biopharma companies where you can engage and benefit from our data. And in breast and ovarian cancer, to give you an example, we've recently worked with some of our academic collaborators to identify some multigenic features which are intronic or intragenic, so really that persist throughout the whole genome, but including the non-coding part of the genome, which is kind of so core to our value proposition. And we realized that through that process, we could potentially identify a significantly large number of responders to a class of drug which is already on the market. So we are outreaching to those companies right at the moment and encouraging them to work with us and identify new responders in the UK healthcare ecosystem, which will no doubt need to be proven through clinical trials. And that's the type of work that we are very keen to do, because we want to get involved in actively supporting the growth of your business. And I've had a great question here about the collaboration, how GEL collaborates with the ecosystem, which is something that I can answer, but I'd actually would love to hear our Chief Scientist, Matt, talk about this. How do you think GEL can better engage with the academic ecosystem in not just the UK, but internationally?
So look, I think at the moment the main limiting factor about GEL's engagement with the academic healthcare system is just actually awareness and communication backwards and forwards. I think we can do a lot better in actually promoting what we have to the world. There's also been a significant challenge for people to actually be able to use and engage with the research environment that we had previously, and I think the new LifeBit platform will make it a lot easier for people to work with the data. And we're also looking at ways that we can, whilst maintaining the core role of our Access Review Committee and patient participants in determining access to the data, looking at ways that we can make the data access process easier and more enticing for the international community. So those things are part of it, but part of it also is the approaches that Parker has shown for the commercial world about looking at ways that we can train and enable people to better use the data as well, so that if you're not as skilled in bioinformatics, that you'll still be able to access and use our data.
Thanks, Matt. This is actually a question for all of us, but I'm going to address it to Chris to begin with. It's about building trust. So the question is, what do you say to people who are concerned about sharing their genomic data with Genomics England, and also about other organisations in the ecosystem? Is there any cause for concern that some organisations may not have high enough data safety standards?
So it's a great question, and it's a question that's on our mind the whole time. I think the first thing I would say is it's not our data. It's the data of our patients and participants, and our role is to be a custodian of those data sets and to work with our patients and participants on how those data sets are accessed, what work is done, and how we maximize the impact from that. The model that we've talked about of a trusted research environment, this kind of, we can pick your metaphor, a reading library, an aquarium, you can come in and admire the fish, you can't take the fish away with you, really lies at the heart of what we're doing. Genomics England has had that model in place for the last kind of 5-6 years, was an early adopter of that model. It's now gaining a lot of currency as a standard across the whole ecosystem. So for example, UK Biobank has stood up a trusted research environment. Our Future Health is standing up a trusted research environment. NHS Digital is standing up a trusted research environment. So the question now is, how do we avoid all of those research environments becoming siloed, and meaning that researchers need to go and sort of replicate research across different trusted research environments, or to build cohorts of patients with rarer conditions becomes really difficult. So we're exploring very actively through partnership with organizations like the Global Alliance for Genomic Health, how we can safely and ethically link some of those data sets for accredited researchers in a way that solves some of those research questions for the benefit of patients and participants, while sustaining both the sort of cybersecurity lens and the kind of ethics and consent and trust angles on this, which are so important.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And as in respect to the question of do we need to be concerned that other organisations get access to this data, just to reiterate what Chris said, our researchers, once they've been validated, can look at the research data in our environment at a patient level. You can only take aggregate data, which is not re-identifiable, out of the research environment. And any extract of aggregate data goes through a manual airlock process where we manually interrogate all of those data releases to make sure that there's been no identifiable data kind of snuck into a data release. So we are really rock solid and watertight on that. This is a terrific question. Someone has observed that UK Biobank is moving to whole genome sequencing, as it actually has over 200,000 whole genomes available today. So the question is, what are some of the unique selling points of Genomics England's data as compared to UK Biobank?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's not an either, it's more like an or, both of them. So very different ways in which the cohorts were collected. Genomics England is, as Parker said, a disease only. So we only have people that have either rare diseases, cancer, or COVID. So that changes the types of questions you might want to be asking. The other aspect is very much around whether you're interested in cancer. So in cancer, we have one of the largest data sets in the world that is available in this way, nearly 20,000 participants with tumor normal deep sequencing. So that's an offering that actually is not present at UK Biobank. But I would say the best research will take all the data that is available to make those discoveries. So definitely not I think that one of the two companies, you have to decide. And what I also would say is we're trying really hard to make sure that the data that we have is consistent also with the data that UK Biobank has, such that you can do indeed those types of cross-analysis.
Yeah, and I think actually the cohesiveness of the UK genomic ecosystem is coming together nicely. So, as Augusta said, we are focusing on cancer and rare disease in Genomics England. Really, the UK Biobank is probably the world's greatest place to go to look for common disease. And this new research program, which is launching and beginning to recruit soon in the UK, Our Future Health, is focusing on an early detection of disease. So if you really think of that constellation together, I think it makes quite a coherent story for why the UK is just a great place to do genomic research.
It might be worth just emphasising also that over the next 3 years we're going to get new programs, particularly in diversity sequencing, which is going to give us a reach out across different ancestral diversity groups, and I think that's going to be of huge and almost unique value certainly amongst UK data sets. And lastly, that the cancer program and rare disease programs are going to get into long-read sequencing, which is also something that's not available in other data sets. So over the next 3 years we'll have quite a diversity of other aspects that are not in UK Biobank.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Matt. My next question, I'm actually going to combine a few questions that have come through. I'm going to pass this on to you, Rich. So this is really about the future of genetic testing in the NHS, and the question is really about what the future of diagnostic testing looks like with so many new technologies coming. We have short reads, we have long reads. Someone asked about optical sequencing, someone else asked about liquid biopsy. How does this all feel from a patient and a clinician perspective?
So as I said before, I think things have really changed in the last 5-10 years because of the arrival of some new technologies. I think the other thing that has changed, and we've been part of and working with NHS England, sort of been a catalyst to a fresh approach and I think a much more logical and well set out approach to how tests are used in different settings in healthcare in the NHS. So, for example, the NHS have established the National Genomic Test Directory, which we're a key evidence provider for and support through our programs. So, for example, through the 100,000 Genomes Project, you'll hear later today, a lot of the data from that work fed the decisions on where whole genome, short read whole genome sequence would be used, in the same way that in the coming years, our work on long read, our work on other data types will help inform those sorts of decisions. So what you end up with is a really nicely thought through and evidence-based set of options in front of you that are, and I think this is really crucial and a big change that the UK should be really proud of and the NHS should be really proud of, that it's equitable. So it doesn't matter if you're sat at Great Ormond Street or you're sat in the southwest or the northeast of the country. It's that same range of tests and the right tests and the best tests for the patient.
Thank you, Rich. There's a lot of questions that are still pouring through that I just can't get to. And can I just make sure that everyone knows that our executive team and actually all of Genomics England is very open. We're open to business, we're open to questions, and please do come and talk to us. Just reach out. We're easy to find. And at this point, we need to close the session. We're going to reconvene after a short break at 10:45 UK time, GMT. And I'm really pleased to say that we have an important keynote speaker from our partner at Novartis, Pierre Pharma, who is zooming in from Basel, where he's going to be presenting about some of the work that they've been doing in the Novartis Institute of Biomedical Research with Genomics England in discovery. So please take a half an hour break and come back and join us at 10:45. Thank you. Thank you to my team.